Everyone in the gallery thought I was there to claw back money. They saw my cousin rehearse a sob, but her first tear wasn't for me. It was for the vault she thought I would never open. I wasn't there for the inheritance. I was there to exhume a crime. My evidence, unlike her grief, didn't need rehearsal. My name is Lucy Martin. I am 32 years old, and my work is finding the rot at North Cove Asset Group. The polite title is Senior Compliance Officer. It's a sterile term for what I actually do. I follow the trail of money until the numbers confess their sins. I hunt for regulatory breaches, hidden leverage, and the kind of creative accounting that lands executives on the front page. Today, however, the hunt had brought me home. I pushed through the heavy oak doors of the Newport Harbor Courthouse, and the atmosphere changed instantly. Outside, on the granite steps, a media circus had formed. It was a humid morning, and the air was thick with salt spray from the harbor, and the aggressive scent of broadcast journalists sensing blood. They shouted my name, but I ignored them. Inside, the chaos vanished, replaced by a cold, echoing silence. The air in the grand hall was heavy with the smell of floor wax, damp wool coats, and the faint, expensive perfume of women trying to mask their anxiety. The gallery was already packed. I walked down the central aisle, my heels striking the marble with a sound like a gavel. Every eye was on me. They saw the outcast, the ungrateful niece, the one who had dared to break the Price family's cardinal rule, silence. I found my table and set down my briefcase. I did not look at my lawyer. My gaze went straight to the respondent's table. She was already there, my cousin Delaney Price, and she was already crying. It wasn't a performance of quiet dignity, it was a full-blown collapse. Her mascara, undoubtedly expensive and waterproof, had surrendered. Thick black streaks ran down her pale cheeks, and her shoulders hitched beneath a silk blouse the color of champagne. She was dabbing at her eyes with a uselessly small tissue. Her gaze fixed on the mahogany table in front of her. She hadn't looked at me, not once, but she didn't have to. That mascara-streaked face was my first confirmation. Delaney knew. She knew what I had in my portfolio. She knew I had found the key, and opened the vault they all thought was sealed forever. I allowed my eyes to drift, scanning the gallery. 2 rows behind Delaney sat the architects of this day, Aunt Celeste and Uncle Raymond. They were the immovable center of the Price universe, the twin stars of Newport society. Celeste sat rigid, her spine straight, her silver hair coiled perfectly. She wore a navy blue suit that probably cost more than my first car, her pearls gleaming like polished bone against her throat. Beside her, Uncle Raymond looked like a man battling apoplexy. His face was a deep, unhealthy red, and his hands gripped the bench in front of him, his knuckles white. They weren't looking at Delaney. They weren't looking at their lawyers. They were staring directly at me. Their expressions weren't of fear or sadness, or even anger. It was something colder. It was the look of a monarch staring at a peasant who had just stormed the throne room. Their eyes held a silent, furious command, "Stop this. You are embarrassing the family. You are destroying the legacy." I turned away from them, forcing my pulse to slow. I had to focus. The reporters lining the back wall, the local gossip columnists, the curious neighbors, they all assumed this was a predictable, grubby fight over inheritance. A disinherited relative trying to claw back her share of the waterfront properties in the stock portfolio. They were wrong. I centered myself, looking at the carved wooden seal of the state above the judge's bench. This wasn't a civil dispute over assets. This was a petition to compel a formal inquiry into probate fraud, forgery of a testamentary document, and the systematic obstruction of justice. I wasn't there to argue about who got the silver. I was there to prove a crime had been committed in the hours after my grandfather died. Across the aisle from me, my legal team was arranging files. But the most important person in the room, besides the judge, was seated in the front row of the gallery, just behind the bar. Ivy Morleary, Assistant United States Attorney, observing from the Boston office. She was technically here as a courtesy, a federal observer in a state probate matter, but we both knew her presence changed the temperature in the room. She felt my gaze and looked up. Her expression was neutral, professional. She gave me one single, sharp nod. It was almost imperceptible. It was all I needed. Resting beside my lawyer's briefcase was a slim, titanium gray USB drive. It looked like nothing, an accessory, but it was the lure. It was the entire case. It held the digital breadcrumbs, the metadata, the audio files, and the scanned documents that connected a forged signature to a conspiracy. It was the evidence Celeste and Raymond believed they had burned, shredded, and erased. The memory of their arrogance tasted like acid. I thought back to the crisis year, the year Price Harbor Properties, the jewel in the family crown, was on the verge of insolvency. Uncle Raymond's speculative bets on commercial real estate had cratered. The banks were calling in their loans. I was 30, just hitting my stride at North Cove, and I saw the rot in their books long before they admitted it. They had called me to Cliffside House, the family mansion overlooking the water, not for advice, but for a bailout. In the library, with the smell of old leather and Raymond's cigar smoke hanging in the air, they laid out their predicament. So, I did what I thought family was supposed to do. I liquidated my personal investment portfolio, every stock, every bond, every mutual fund. I had spent a decade building, $480,000. I wired it directly to the Price corporate account. There was no paperwork, no promissory note. It was a handshake deal. "You are saving the legacy, Lucy," Raymond had said, patting my shoulder with a hand that smelled of whiskey. "We will make this right." The money stabilized the company. The banks backed off. My reward came 2 weeks later, not a phone call, not a meeting. A courier delivered a single, stiff envelope to my apartment. Inside was a letter typed on Aunt Celeste's heavy cream stationery. It thanked me for my unsolicited contribution to the family's assets and informed me that, due to my clear emotional overreach and attempts to interfere in established management structures, my advisory seat on the board was being terminated, effective immediately. They cashed my check and threw me out. They used my own money to buy the ink to write my dismissal. I forced the memory down. Returning to the courtroom, I scanned the gallery again, analyzing the seating chart like I would a balance sheet. I saw the local stringer for the Newport Daily News, pen poised. More importantly, I saw a woman I recognized by her reputation, a senior financial crimes reporter from the Boston Globe. The scandal had legs. It had already run north to Boston. They still thought this was about the $480,000. They did not understand that was just the appetizer. The bailiff's voice boomed, "All rise." We stood. The scraping of chairs, the rustle of clothing, the collective coughs. The sound of my own heels clicking on the marble, as I stood echoed in the high-ceilinged room. That specific sound, a sharp clack on cold stone, threw me back instantly. It was the sound my shoes made on the floor of the archive room at Cliffside House, the subterranean vault, chilled to a constant 60 degrees, where the family's real history was kept. It smelled of old paper, leather bindings, and the faint chemical tang of bleach. That was where the trail had started, not with my money, but in a forgotten box, with a signature that looked wrong. "Please raise your right hand." I raised it. My hand was perfectly steady. "Do you swear or affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?" "So help you, God." I kept my gaze forward, but I could feel Celeste staring at the side of my head. I could feel her projecting the full force of her disappointment, her outrage. The Price family motto, carved into the massive fireplace at Cliffside House, was Honos ante omnia, honor above all. But their definition of honor was silence. Their honor was protecting the name, protecting the illusion, no matter who got crushed in the process. They genuinely believed that I, by standing here, was the one committing the sin. I was not pledging allegiance to their version of honor. I was putting my faith in the hard, immutable, verifiable signature of the truth. I do, I said. My voice was clear and did not waver. Please be seated. I sat down. The silence in the room was absolute. Across the aisle, I saw Delaney. She had stopped dabbing her eyes. She was leaning, desperate, toward her own attorney, a man whose tailored suit suddenly looked too large for him. She whispered something frantic, urgent, and then I saw it. She gave a small, sharp, terrified shake of her head. It wasn't a gesture of defiance, it wasn't a denial. It was the unmistakable panic of someone realizing the script had been thrown out. The carefully rehearsed story her mother had fed her, the narrative they had all agreed upon, was already falling apart. The show was over before it had even begun. The judge cleared his throat, a dry rasp that cut through the silence. Ms. Maulery, your opening statement. Ivy Maulery stood up, but my mind wasn't on her words. It was 3 months ago, in the hallway of my own apartment. It started not with a gunshot, but with the soft sound of a package sliding against my door. It was a Tuesday evening, late, and I was coming home from the office. I found it leaning against the threshold, a simple 9 by 12 manila envelope. There was no postmark, no courier label, no return address, just my name, Lucy Martin, printed in block letters by a cheap inkjet printer. I carried it inside. My compliance-trained mind was already cataloguing the anomalies. A hand-delivered package meant someone knew my routine, knew my address, and did not want to leave a digital or physical trail. I slid it open. Inside, there was no note, no threat, just a sheaf of heavy, watermarked bond paper folded twice. I unfolded it. It was a last will and testament. I recognized the letterhead instantly. It was my grandfather's personal stationery, the kind he only used for correspondence from his private library at Cliffside House. But it was the writing that stopped my breath. It was his hand, that familiar, strong, left-leaning script. I read the first line, I, Whittaker Price, being of sound mind. I scanned the pages, my eyes jumping to the key articles. The legal ease was dense, but the intent was brutally clear. He revoked all previous wills. He named me, Lucy Martin, as his sole executor. He bequeathed to me, in recognition of her integrity and clear-sightedness, the entirety of his estate, the house, the stocks, Price Harbor properties, everything. It was dated just 2 months before his death. The problem was simple. My grandfather, Whittaker Price, had died in 2014. And the official, notarized, publicly probated will that was read in his lawyer's office that grim afternoon, the one that made local headlines, named my cousin, Delaney Price, as the sole beneficiary of the entire estate. The document in my hand did not just contradict the official record, it detonated it. I did not weep. I did not celebrate. I went to my desk, turned on my high-intensity lamp, and pulled out my jeweler's loupe. This was my world, verification. I examined the paper first. It was correct. The watermark, the weight, it was his. I examined the ink. Parker Quink, black, his preferred brand. Then I focused on the signature at the end, Whittaker Price. It was good. It was very, very good. But something was wrong. My work at North Cove involves staring at signatures until they confess. I look for the hesitation in a forgery, the unnatural pressure of a trace. This had none of that, it was fluid. But I knew his signature better than my own. I pulled up a file on my computer, a scanned copy of the official probated will from 2014, the one that gave everything to Delaney. I put it side by side with the document in my hand. The difference was stark. The probated official will, the one everyone accepted, was the fake. I put the loop on the signature of that official will. The line quality was flat, uniform. The P in price was slightly too upright. My grandfather's hand, especially when he was ill, always had a distinct slant, a slight drag on the upstroke. I measured the axis of the letter. It was off by approximately 7 degrees from every authentic sample I had in my files. Then I did what I should have done years ago. I pulled the digital file of the 2009 summer Key Villa sale. It was an old, complex contract, undisputed, authenticated, and buried in the family archives. I zoomed in on the signature. I dragged the image file and overlaid it onto the signature from the 2014 probated will. My blood ran cold. They weren't just similar, they were identical. A perfect pixel-for-pixel match. In the world of document analysis, a perfect match is the one thing that is never real. A person never signs their name exactly the same way twice. There are always microscopic variations in pressure, speed, and spacing. This wasn't a signature, it was a digital stamp. They had lifted his signature from the 2009 contract, probably cleaned it up in Photoshop, and dropped it onto a new document, a high-quality forgery. But a forgery nonetheless. The official will, the one that made Delaney and Aries beneficiaries, was a fabrication, which meant the handwritten document in my hand, the one that gave everything to me, was very likely real. But how to prove it? A handwritten will, unwitnessed, is a hard sell. I went back to my hard drives. Decades of family photos, digitized from old albums. I searched for the date on the handwritten will. I found an old SD card from my college camera. The folder was labeled Summer 2014. Home. I clicked through images of barbecues, of sails on the harbor, of my grandfather looking frail, but happy on the porch. And then I found it, a photo of him at his desk in the library. He was wearing his favorite cashmere cardigan. He was signing a document, a sheaf of heavy cream-colored paper. I checked the metadata of the photograph, the timestamp, the exact date on the digital file, and matched it to the date written at the top of the will in my hand. It was the same day. This was the moment. I zoomed in, trying to see the document itself. It was too blurry, but I saw something else. I zoomed past my grandfather's shoulder into the dark, polished glass of the bookcase behind him. I saw a reflection, a figure standing just out of frame, watching Aunt Celeste. At the time, it would have been nothing, her daughter in the room with her ailing father. But now, seeing it through the lens of the forgery, it wasn't a snapshot, it was a scene of supervision. The faint, distorted reflection of her face wasn't warm, it was tight, impatient. It was the look of someone waiting for a task to be completed. It was pressure. My hands were shaking now, not with fear, but with a cold, clear rage. I opened a new, encrypted spreadsheet. My comfort zone. I created a timeline. Column A, dates. Column B, events. Column C, documentation. I mapped the last 60 days of my grandfather's life. I cross-referenced the photo's dates with his medical calendar. It was a good day, his record said, low pain, high lucidity. A perfect day to sign a real will. Then I mapped what came after, the rapid decline, the days he was kept heavily sedated, the dates his private attorney, a principled old-timer named Julian Croft, was suddenly unavailable. He had supposedly taken an emergency vacation to Bermuda. He retired the day he returned and disappeared from Newport Society, moving to Florida. And then I tracked the date of the official will reading. The timeline gave me a new vector to check, the bank. My grandfather kept a large safe deposit box at the county bank. As a former signator on his business accounts, I still had legacy access to the logs, though not the box itself. I filed a formal request for the entry logs for that specific box, citing a routine audit. The log was clean for months. He had been too ill to go, except for one entry. It was dated the night before the official will reading. An entry timestamped at 9:47 p.m. The bank had been closed for almost 5 hours. It was an after-hours, manual override entry. The signature authorizing the access, Celeste Price. It all snapped into place, the surgical precision of it, the arrogance. Celeste watched him sign the real will. He dies. She knows the will is in his safe deposit box. She cannot let it be found at the official opening. So, she arranges for after-hours access. She removes the real will, but she cannot just destroy it, that's a crime. And what if she's caught? She needs a replacement. So, she and Raymond, or someone they hired, fabricate a new one. They lift my grandfather's signature from an old contract, the 2009 sale, and stamp it onto their new, fraudulent document. The new name's Delaney, their pliable, controllable daughter, as the sole heir. They file their forgery. The vanishing lawyer, Croft, was probably threatened or bought off. He vanishes, taking his silence with him. The perfect crime. This was not a family dispute. This was not a misunderstanding. This was a conspiracy to commit fraud. This was manipulation of an elderly person. This was forgery, obstruction, and, given what happened to Croft, possibly even witness tampering. But who sent me the real will? Someone knew. Someone had kept it, hidden it for all these years. Someone who had just decided, 3 months ago, that it was time for the truth to come out. I did not call a price. I did not call Delaney. I did not call my aunt. I went into professional lockdown. I spent the next 6 hours scanning every page of the handwritten will, every bank log, every medical record, and the high-resolution photo of Celeste's reflection in the glass. I compiled the timeline. I wrote a full, cold procedural memorandum, just as I would for a North Cove investigation, detailing every finding, every inference, and every piece of evidence. I encrypted the entire package using 25,000-bit AES encryption. I divided the decryption key into 3 separate, useless on their own parts. I uploaded the master file to a secure, anonymous cloud server. I sent the first part of the key, embedded in a string of innocuous code, to my old college roommate, now a lead cybersecurity analyst in London. The second part went to my former mentor in Chicago, a man who taught me how to read a balance sheet like a confession. The third went to a trusted constitutional lawyer in New York. My instructions were simple. If they did not hear from me on the 1st of every month, or if they read my name in an obituary, they were to combine their keys. The file would unlock, and they were to send the complete package to 2 places, the office of the United States Attorney and the senior financial crimes reporter at the Boston Globe. The dead man's switch was active. Only then did I pick up the phone. I did not call the local Newport police. This was too big, too complex for them. I called the one person I knew would understand the intersection of money, power, and crime. I called Ivy Mall-Erie. Ivy, I said when she picked up, I have a problem with a will. I think my family forged it. There was a pause. Lucy, she said, her voice all business. A will is a state probate matter. That's not my jurisdiction. It is, I said, my voice low and steady. When it's used to conceal wire fraud, obstruct a federal investigation, and involves potential witness tampering across state lines. Another pause, longer this time. Come to Boston, she said. Tomorrow. Ivy Mallory's office in Boston was a different world from Newport. It was all glass, steel, and federal efficiency. She listened to my entire story without interruption. Her fingers steepled. She examined my timeline, the bank log, and the high-resolution photo of Celeste's reflection. The forgery is clean, she said, nodding at the overlaid signatures. The bank log is damning. The photo is good circumstantial color, But the handwritten will, it's problematic, unwitnessed. A jury will see it as a desperate play from a disinherited relative. We have a motive for them, but we don't have the act. What about Julian Croft, the lawyer who vanished? I asked. He's in a high-end nursing facility in Boca Raton, Ivy said, tapping her keyboard. Severe dementia. His file was sealed 2 years ago. He's a dead end. She was right. I had a strong, compelling narrative, but it was hollow in the middle. I had the fraudulent will and I believed the real one. I was missing the bridge. I was missing the person who connected the two. Croft might be gone, I said. But he had an assistant, a paralegal, Frederick Hale. He left the firm right after Croft's retirement in 2015. He dropped off the map. Find him, Ivy said. Find Hale. Find the bridge. Finding Frederick Hale wasn't easy. He hadn't used his social security number for any W-2 employment in 6 years. He was off the grid. But compliance work teaches you to look for shadows. People don't just disappear, they just change their patterns. I searched property records, utility bills, boat moorings. I found him on Block Island. He wasn't listed as an owner, he was listed as a long-term caretaker for an offshore property, paid in cash. I took the ferry the next morning. The crossing was cold, the sky a flat, metallic grey. Block Island in the off-season is a skeletal place, beautiful but desolate. I found him at a small cafe near the ferry landing, the only place open. He was older than I remembered. His face was weathered by the wind and something deeper. He was staring into a coffee cup, as if it held all the answers. When I sat down, he did not look up. I wondered if you'd ever come, he said. His voice was rough. I found my grandfather's real will. Frederick flinched. He finally raised his eyes. They forged the other one, I said. The one that gave everything to Delaney. You were there. You were Croft's assistant. You notarized it. I notarized what I was told to notarize, he whispered, his hands shaking. Julian, Mr. Croft. He tried to argue. He said it was unethical. He said Whitaker would never. What happened? Hale looked around the empty cafe. He reached into his coat pocket and slid a tiny microcassette recorder across the table. It was the kind journalists used 20 years ago. This is all I have, he said. I kept it as insurance in case they ever came for me. It's a copy. I recorded a meeting. Mr. Croft is on vacation, and they called me to Cliffside House, to the library. I took the recorder. What's on it? Just listen, then throw it away and forget you ever saw me. He stood up, dropped $3 on the table, and walked out into the wind, not looking back. I sat there for a moment, the small plastic rectangle heavy in my hand. I did not have a cassette player. I went back to my car, dug through the glove compartment, and found an old adapter I used for audiobooks. I plugged it in. I pressed play. The hiss of old tape, then a voice, younger, but unmistakably Frederick Hale. I can't draft this. This isn't what he wanted. Then Aunt Celeste's voice, cold, measured. What Mr. Price wanted was to protect his legacy. He was not in his right mind. We are protecting him. Celeste wants the new version. We need the new version for the reading. If I refuse, Hale's voice was cracking, if I refuse, I will not have a file to live on. I will not have a license. A pause. The sound of a heavy glass being set on a desk. Then my Uncle Raymond. His voice was a low growl. A two-word sentence that chilled me to the bone, do it at all costs. The tape clicked off. I sat in my car, the sound of the wind and the surf outside. But all I could hear was that command, at all costs. This was not just fraud, this was coercion. This was the threat that had broken Frederick Hale, and sent Julian Croft into exile. I called Hale's number. He picked up on the fifth ring. I told you to throw it away. I need one more thing, Frederick, I said, the real will. My grandfather's. Where did Celeste put it after she took it from the bank box? I don't know, he said, his voice frantic. Guess, I said. They wouldn't destroy it. Celeste is too much of a narcissist. She'd want to keep it as a trophy. Where? A long, ragged sigh. The painting, he said, in the library. The big one, the Brenton Reef Lighthouse. It was always crooked. Always. Mr. Price, Whitaker, he hated it. He was obsessed with details. He would straighten it every single day. But it was always crooked again the next morning. It drove him crazy. It was a joke. Except it wasn't. It hung crooked because it was not flat. It covered the wall safe. A wall safe, of course. Thank you, Frederick. I said, you're not protecting me. He said, you're just aiming the gun in a different direction. He hung up. I drove straight to Boston to Ivy's office. I played her the tape. Her expression did not change, but her eyes hardened. This is the bridge, she said. This is the conspiracy. Coercion of a legal professional. This gives me a predicate. We can loop in the state AG. I need to get into that safe. We cannot just get a warrant for a house search based on a disgruntled employee's guess from 9 years ago, I said. Ivy said, we need more. We need a direct link between them and that safe. Now the audio, the bank log, and the photo of Celeste in the library. It's a strong probabilistic link. But a judge will want something current. Something to show they are actively concealing. They know I'm looking, I said. They must. I did not realize how right I was until I got back to my apartment that night. The door was unlocked. The deadbolt was thrown. I always lock my deadbolt. I eased the door open. The lights were on. My heart was hammering against my ribs. I did not go in. I called 911. The police cleared it. The apartment was empty. Nothing was stolen. My laptop was on the desk. My jewelry box was untouched. My backup hard drives were still in their drawer, but they had been there. The air was wrong. It smelled faintly of Uncle Raymond's cologne. And on my desk, placed neatly on top of my closed laptop, was a single piece of heavy, cream-colored stationery, the same kind Aunt Celeste used. It was not a letter. It was a note. 4 words, printed in the same inkjet block letters as the package, family first, truth second. It was not a suggestion, it was an order, and it was a confirmation. They knew I had the real will. They knew I had been to Block Island. I did not sleep that night. The next morning, I had a commercial-grade security system installed, 4 cameras, motion sensors, glass break detectors. I changed every password to every account, bank, email, trading, utilities. I moved my liquid assets, including my crypto, into a new cold storage wallet, and locked it in a bank vault. The offensive had begun. 3 days later, my phone buzzed. A text from Delaney. It was the first time she had contacted me in almost a year. Hey, I know things are awful. I miss you. Can we just talk? Just us. The marina. Our old spot. Tomorrow. Neutral ground. My old spot. Bench number 3, overlooking the harbor where we used to eat ice cream. Neutral ground. There is no such thing as neutral ground. I texted Ivy. They are trying to set up a meeting. Delaney. Ivy's reply was instant. Wear a wire. No, I texted back. They'll be expecting that. It's too obvious. I went to the marina an hour early. I walked the docks. The air was clean, salty. I found bench number 3. It was exactly as I remembered it. I sat down. I ran my hands over the worn teak. Underneath the seat, taped firmly to the wooden slat, was a small black digital audio recorder. The power light was already blinking. They had pre-planted it. They weren't trying to record me. They were trying to record her. They were trying to get me to threaten her, to say something they could use to paint me as unstable, as an extortionist. I sat back down on the bench, leaving the recorder exactly where it was. I waited. Delaney arrived 10 minutes later. She looked terrible. Her eyes were puffy, and she was wearing sunglasses on an overcast day. She was wringing her hands. She did not hug me. Lucy, thanks for coming. What do you want, Delaney? I want this to stop, she whispered. You're tearing everything apart. It's just stuff. It's just money. It's not money, Delaney. It's a crime. You don't understand, she said, her voice rising, cracking with a hysteria that was all too real. You're painting her as a monster. She was just trying to protect the family. Protecting me from what? The truth. From grandfather's actual wishes. From everything. She was breaking down. And then the slip, the one mistake I was waiting for. You can't win this, Lucy. Auntie said the courts hate disloyal grandchildren. They'll say you're vindictive. They'll throw it out. Please just stop, Auntie said. That was it. That was the coordination. That was the proof that this wasn't Delaney's idea. This was a script, rehearsed and directed by Celeste. I stood up. I'm sorry you're in this position, Delaney. What? Wait. Where are you going? She stammered, confused. I can't help you, I said. And I walked away, leaving her on the bench with her mother's blinking recorder. I got in my car and drove to the edge of the parking lot. I texted Ivy. She's wired. They pre-planted a bug. She just confirmed Celeste is coaching her. Auntie said the courts hate disloyal grandchildren. They are actively building a false narrative. They are starting to dust their own footprints. Ivy's reply was grim. They are scared. They are cleaning house. We still need something at Cliffside. I did not have to wait long. At 4:17 that afternoon, a new email arrived in my encrypted inbox. It was from an anonymous, throwaway Proton Mail account. The subject line was one word, library. The email contained a single image. It was an infrared photograph, grainy, time-stamped 2:17 a.m. that very morning. It was a picture of the library at Cliffside House. The heavy oak door was open a crack. A beam of light cut across the floor. Someone was inside. Someone was cleaning house. Someone was at the safe. I forwarded the email to Ivy. This is it. This is the current activity. They are destroying evidence right now. Her call came 30 seconds later. I'm filing for the warrant. The call came from their lawyer, a man named Vane, whose voice was as smooth and cold as oiled slate. He requested my presence for an informal mediation, a reconciliation meeting, he called it. The Price family, he said, is eager to resolve this unfortunate misunderstanding with amicable grace. The location they chose was the Tidal Oaks Club. It was not neutral ground, it was their fortress, the bastion of Newport old money, a dark, wooded cathedral of inherited power. The air inside smelled of beeswax, old leather, and the kind of institutional wealth that viewed ethics as a minor inconvenience. They were waiting for me in a private dining room. Celeste, Raymond, and, wedged between them, a pale, silent Delaney. Vane, their lawyer, stood to greet me with all false sincerity. "Ms. Martin, thank you for coming. We all believe this has gone on long enough." I sat opposite them. The table was a vast expanse of polished mahogany. Celeste took charge immediately. She leaned forward, clasping her hands. She attempted a look of pained, matriarchal concern. "Lucy, this behavior, it is not you. It is not this family. We are prepared to be generous. We want to put this entire sad episode behind us." She slid a single, leather-bound folder across the table. "We are offering a comprehensive reconciliation package, a full and final settlement of all claims, real or imagined." Vane cleared his throat. "The offer is for $700,000, contingent on the immediate cessation of all legal actions and the signing of a permanent, binding non-disclosure agreement." $700,000. I did not open the folder. I kept my eyes on Celeste. My mind, trained in compliance, was already running the numbers. The figure was not random, it was calculated. "That is an interesting number," I said. My voice was quiet, but it cut through the room's heavy silence. "Why $700,000? Vane started to speak, but I held my gaze on Celeste. "It's specific." "Is it specific, Aunt?" "Because it represents approximately 1/16 of the most recent appraisal of Cliffside House." It happened. The micro-expression, the mistake. Celeste did not gasp. She did not blink. She froze for perhaps half a second. The muscles around her eyes tightened, and her polite mask became a rigid, brittle shell. She had done the math. She was trying to buy me off with a fraction of what she knew the estate was worth. The lie, the error, was revealed. She had confirmed she was operating from a position of concealment before she could recover. Uncle Raymond slammed his palm on the table. The water glasses jumped. "This is outrageous," he roared, his face darkening to a familiar shade of purple. "Gratitude. That is what we should be hearing. We gave you everything. You took the education, the connections, the platform that North Cove Asset Group gave you, and you are using it to turn and bite the family that fed you." It was the threat I had been waiting for, the veiled implication that his reach extended far beyond Newport, right into my professional life in Boston. He was threatening my career. I let his echo die down. I did not raise my voice. I slowly reached into my own briefcase. I removed a single glossy photograph. I placed it in the center of the table, turning it to face them. "Speaking of finances," I said, "it was not a picture of the will. It was a high-resolution image of a bank transfer confirmation." Celeste, Raymond, and Vane all leaned forward. Delaney stared at it uncomprehending. "That," I said, "is a wire transfer from a shell entity registered in the Cayman Islands, Harbor Annuity Limited, to a private trust fund, Delaney's Trust Fund. The transfer was for a very substantial sum." I tapped the date on the photograph. "And it was executed 2 days after my grandfather's funeral. 2 days, long before the fraudulent will was even filed with the probate court." Delaney's face went white. She looked from the paper to her mother. "Mom, what is that?" "I don't." Raymond looked as if I had physically struck him, but it was Vane, the lawyer, who reacted fastest. He shot to his feet. "This meeting is over. This is an ambush. This is inadmissible. We are here in a confidential mediation. Nothing said, nothing presented is on the record." "I am not in court, Mr. Vane," I said, looking up at him. I am just having a family conversation. I am asking my aunt why she was moving vast sums of money offshore from a company my grandfather did not own into her daughter's account immediately after his death. It looks very much like a payout. It looks like the first step in a plan. You? Celeste's voice was a low hiss. The mask was gone. Her eyes were burning with pure, distilled hatred. You have no idea what you are meddling with. I know you pressured Julian Croft, I said, my voice hardening. I know you coerced Frederick Hale. I know you faked a will. My father's lawyer, she snapped, her voice rising, understood what was best for the family. He understood his duty to the legacy. Something you have clearly forgotten. Gotcha. My phone was on the table, screen dark. It had been recording audio since I sat down. That was it. That was the admission. Her claim that the lawyer understood was a direct acknowledgement of her influence over him. I glanced at her hand. She reached for her martini glass, the one the club had served her upon arrival. Her fingers, usually so steady, trembled just slightly, a faint rattling clink of her ring against the glass. I had her. I had the rhythm. She was off balance. Vane was grabbing his coat, motioning for the prices to stand. Do not say another word, Celeste, not one. My phone buzzed on the table. A text message. I glanced down. It was from my anonymous source, the same Proton Mail account that had sent the infrared image of the library door. This was a new image. It was a close-up, taken in what looked like daylight. It showed raw plaster, exposed wooden lath, and dangling wires. It was a hole in the library wall. The precise, rectangular outline of the wall safe that Frederick Hale had told me about. The safe itself was gone, ripped out. Below the image, a two-word caption, too late. My blood ran cold. They had not just cleaned the safe at 2:11 in the morning, they had removed it. They had excised the evidence completely. They thought they had won. They thought they had finally, truly, erased the real will. Vane was ushering a furious Raymond and a shell-shocked Celeste toward the door. We will be filing for sanctions, Ms. Martin. Martin, for this theatre. I stood slowly, collecting my things. I walked calmly, not to the exit, but to the ladies' room. I locked the stall door, my hands finally shaking. I immediately forwarded the new image, and the text message to Ivy Mulleary. My phone buzzed with her reply in under 10 minutes. Her words lit up the screen. They just gave us everything. This is not exculpatory. This is spoliation of evidence. They just admitted the safe's existence by destroying it. They just confirmed they are actively concealing. The judge signed the warrant. Full raid. It is happening. Get out of there. I took a deep breath. I walked out of the club, past the valet, into the grey afternoon air. Lucy. I turned. Delaney was running across the parking lot, her heels clattering on the asphalt. She had dodged her parents. Her face was a wreck. The tears were real this time, desperate. Lucy, please, she sobbed, grabbing my arm. Her grip was surprisingly strong. You have to listen to me. I waited. I swear to God, Lucy, I did not know about the lawyer. I did not know about Mr. Croft or anyone. I just... She was hyperventilating. Mom just said that grandfather had changed his mind at the end. She said he was confused, and she was just fixing it, making it what it was supposed to be. She said it was for the best. It was a half-truth, a desperate, terrified, self-serving confession. She knew enough to be complicit, but not enough to be in control. I looked at her, and for the first time, I did not see a rival. I saw a tool, a pawn who was just now realizing she was on the front line, and her own side was about to sacrifice her. She wasn't afraid of me. She was terrified of her mother. They are destroying evidence, Delaney, I said, my voice flat. Right now, as we are standing here, they are at cliffside covering their tracks. I pulled my arm free from her grasp. The victim of today, I realized, can become the star witness of tomorrow, especially if she is offered the right protection. I left her standing alone in the parking lot, watching me walk away. It happened at dawn, not a quiet, misty Newport dawn, but a hard, cold, gunmetal grey dawn, the kind that promises a bitter day. I was not part of the entry team. I was a civilian observer, which meant I stood on the curb, vibrating with adrenaline, while Ivy Mall-Erie and 4 U.S. Marshals, their vests emblazoned with police, walked up the stone path to the front door of Cliffside House. Ivy rang the bell, a long, demanding peal. It took 3 minutes. The lights flickered on inside. Finally, the heavy oak door swung open. Aunt Celeste stood there. She was in a silk dressing gown, her silver hair perfectly in place, as if she had been expecting company. She held a coffee cup. When she saw the vests, she did not gasp. She did not raise her voice. She composed her features into that familiar tight smile, the one she used for the hospital charity board. A look of pained, bubbly inconvenience. Assistant U.S. Attorney Mall-Erie, she said, her voice dripping with ice, and Marshals. This is aggressive even for you. Do you make a habit of terrorizing citizens before breakfast? We have a warrant, Mrs. Price, Ivy said, holding up the paper, to search the premises for documents, digital media, and financial records pertaining to the estate of Whitaker Price. We are coming in. The Marshals moved past her, fanning out into the massive foyer. I was motioned to follow, staying close to Ivy. Celeste's eyes found me. The smile vanished. You, she spat. You did this. You brought this filth into our home. I brought the truth, I said. You just live here. Uncle Raymond appeared at the top of the stairs, blustering, pulling a robe on. What is the meaning of this? This is harassment. I'll have your badges. Library, Ivy said to her team, ignoring him. We moved as a single unit down the hall into the dark, leather-bound room that smelled of my grandfather's pipe tobacco and furniture polish. It was exactly as I remembered, and there, over the massive fireplace, was the painting, the Brenton Reef Lighthouse. My heart hammered against my ribs. I looked at it. It was crooked. It was hanging exactly 3 millimeters to the left. Frederick Hale's words echoed in my head. It drove him crazy. It was always crooked. Mrs. Price, Ivy said, we have reason to believe there is a wall safe located behind this painting. Celeste actually laughed. A short, sharp, ugly sound. A wall safe. This is not a movie, Ms. Mall-Erie. Mall-Erie. You are going to find dust, and then you are going to be named in the largest civil suit this state has ever seen. Move it, Ivy ordered. 2 marshals lifted the heavy, gilt-framed painting off its hook. They set it on the floor. Behind it was a small, black digital keypad, a wall safe. Celeste's breath hitched. It was the only sound she made. She had not expected this. She had not known Hale knew. The too late text, the photo of the ripped-out safe, it was a bluff, a desperate, arrogant psychological operation to make me stop, to make me believe I had already lost. Open it, the marshal said to Celeste. I have no idea what the combination is, she said, her voice thin. It was my father's. I stepped forward. Ivy looked at me. My grandfather and I had a game, I said, my voice surprisingly steady. He called me his good luck charm. He used the same numbers for everything. I reached past the marshal. My fingers felt cold, but they did not tremble. I looked at the keypad. Your birthday is the key, I said. 0708. A small green light blinked. A soft mechanical click echoed in the library. The handle turned. The heavy steel door swung open. It was not empty. The room was absolutely silent, save for Uncle Raymond's ragged breathing. One of the marshals, gloved, began to remove the contents. One leather-bound journal, one Parker pen, one silver-colored USB thumb drive, one sealed envelope, cream-colored with a red wax seal. As the marshal held up the envelope, the one addressed to me, Raymond made his move. He gasped, a terrible, theatrical sound. He clutched his chest, stumbling back against a bookshelf. My heart, he wheezed. I can't breathe. Celeste sprang into action. All manufactured panic. Raymond. Oh my God. You're killing him. He has a condition. Call his cardiologist. Now get an ambulance. It was a pathetic, obvious tactic, a desperate attempt to stop the search, to create chaos, to regain control. Ivy did not even turn around. A marshal will attend to him, she said, her voice bored. EMTs are on standby, as is standard procedure. Continue securing the evidence. Raymond's heart attack seemed to subside as he realized no one was buying it. Ivy, another marshal called from the dining room, you need to see this. We walked across the hall. On the magnificent 18th century mahogany dining table sat a heavy-duty office shredder. The marshal placed his gloved hand on the plastic casing. It's still warm, he said. Celeste's eyes flickered to the machine. They had spent the night shredding. They were destroying the paper trail, the bank statements, the letters. They had been so focused on the paper, they had forgotten. They did not know my grandfather was a digital convert. They did not know he still kept a journal. The marshals tagged and bagged the shredder. We did not wait to get back to Boston. Ivy had a mobile forensics van parked down the street. It was sterile, cold, and packed with technology. I sat in a jump seat, while a tech plugged the silver USB drive into a secured laptop. It's not documents. Not in the way we thought, the tech said. It's ledgers. The screen filled with spreadsheets. My world. These are the real balance sheets for Price Harbor Properties, I said, my voice low. For 2013 and 2014. I scanned the rows. The numbers were clear. The company was healthy, profitable. It was not on the verge of collapse. The entire crisis, the plea for my $480,000, was a lie. It was a manufactured emergency to steal my money and leverage me out. There's another file, the tech said. It's a chart. He opened it. It was a flowchart. At the top, Price Harbor Properties. Below it, 5 boxes, 5 shell companies registered in the Caymans. The one I had found, Harbor Annuity, was just one of them. Arrows showed monthly transfers, disguised as consulting fees and insurance premiums, flowing from the family company into these offshore accounts. It was a massive, systematic siphon. While the tech copied the drive, Ivy and I opened the journal. It was his handwriting, his observations on the weather, on the books he was reading, and then the entries from his final weeks. I found the line. It was dated the day after the photo I had of him signing the will. I fear I've been too harsh on Delaney. She is a good girl, but weak. She fears her mother more than she fears being wrong. This weakness will be her burden, as it is Celeste's weapon. Ivy and I locked eyes. That one sentence did it. It was a character assessment from the grave. It changed Delaney from a co-conspirator to a coerced witness. It gave us a new strategy. Finally, I took the envelope. Lucy, if you are patient enough. My hands were shaking now. I broke the red wax seal. It was a single sheet of his heavy stationery. A handwritten letter. To my Lucy, it began. I have left you everything, not because you are blood, but because you have a straight spine. It is the only thing the Prices ever truly respected, and the only thing they have now lost. They will fight you. They will lie. They will try to break you. Do not let them. The painting was always your clue. Your birthday is the key. The rest is just noise. Your fight is not with them. It is for the truth. W.P. Ivy closed the forensic laptop. She looked at me, and for the first time, the federal prosecutor mask slipped. Well, Lucy, she said, this is enough to reopen probate, and it is more than enough to move the criminal file from inquiry to indictment. I stepped out of the van into the cold morning light. I looked back at the house, at the grand, imposing facade of Cliffside. Celeste was standing in the library window. The drapes were pulled back. She was no longer performing. Her face was bare. Her hair slightly mussed. Her silk robe was undone. The charity smile was gone. The anger was gone. All that was left was a blank, hollow, unspoken defeat. It was an expression I had never seen on her face. It was the look of a queen, who had just heard the gates of her own castle being barred from the outside. She was staring, not at Ivy, not at the marshals, but directly at me. The raid on Cliffside House was a lit match dropped into a drum of gasoline. The explosion came the next morning. The front page of the Newport Daily News was stark. The headline, in a bold, heavy font, screamed, "Harbour Capital Shaken, Price Home Searched by Federal Agents." The story was thin on confirmed details, but thick with speculation. They had photos of the marshals' vehicles, a long-lens shot of Ivy on the steps, and, worst of all, a grainy picture of me standing on the curb. The phone started, my cell, my work email, my personal email, a flood of reporters, old acquaintances, curious colleagues. I silenced them all. The Price family's fortress of silence had been breached, and the public was storming the walls. Aunt Celeste did not hide, she counterattacked. By noon, the news website was running an exclusive op-ed from her. It was a masterpiece of narrative warfare. She did not deny the raid. She reframed it. She painted me as a deeply troubled and emotionally unstable niece, lashing out after years of personal and professional disappointments. She claimed I was fabricating a fantastical conspiracy to seize by force an inheritance my grandfather had wisely and deliberately kept from me. She even spun my $480,000 contribution, twisting it into an unsolicited and reckless gamble that my uncle had been forced to clean up. It was a brilliant, vicious piece of character assassination. She wasn't just arguing the facts, she was trying to destroy my credibility, as a witness, and as a professional. Her attack landed exactly where she intended it to. At 2:30 that afternoon, I received a calendar invitation from the head of Human Resources and the Chief Legal Officer at North Cove Asset Group. The subject, Urgent External Matter Review. When I logged into the video call, their faces were grim. "Lucy," our CLLO began, skipping the pleasantries, "we have a situation." An anonymous email was sent to the entire executive board this morning. He forwarded it. The email was short and brutal. It cited the Newport Daily News article. It accused me of using North Cove's proprietary data analysis tools and professional resources to pursue a personal family vendetta. It alleged a severe and undisclosed conflict of interest and demanded an immediate internal investigation into my work. It was signed, a concerned stakeholder, rife with Uncle Raymond's influence. "You are a compliance officer, Lucy," the HR head said, her voice strained. "The optics on this are appalling. You are in the business of trust. This implies you are untrustworthy. We need a full explanation." They are not asking for my side. They are asking for damage control. What I am doing is on my own time, I said, my voice cold and even. It is a private legal matter concerning fraud and the forgery of a testamentary document. It stopped being a private matter when federal agents showed up in the newspaper, the CLLO countered. And it became our matter when your name was linked to North Cove in the same breath as unstable and vendetta. You are to provide a full, written explanation of the situation and your involvement by end of day. The call ended while I was being professionally quarantined. Ivy was fighting the public-facing battle. She held a brief press conference on the steps of the federal building in Providence. It was short, tactical, and designed to starve the fire of oxygen. The U.S. Attorney's Office, in conjunction with state partners, is conducting an inquiry into matters related to the estate of Whitaker Price, she said, her voice flat and official. The warrants executed yesterday were part of this ongoing investigation. This is a complex matter involving financial and probate records. The integrity of the investigation is paramount. We will have no further comment at this time. We ask for patience as the legal process unfolds. It was not a denial, and it was not a confirmation. It was a clear institutional signal, this is real, this is serious, back off. But the story was already too big. And Celeste's op-ed, while brilliant, had a fatal flaw. She had to acknowledge my $480,000 gamble. She had opened the door. That evening, my phone rang. It was a name I had not seen in years, Mark Gallo, the former CFO of Price Harbor Properties. He was a good man, a numbers man, who had quit abruptly in 2016, citing ethical disagreements with Raymond. Lucy, he said, his voice quick. I read Celeste's op-ed. It's a load of crap. You didn't gamble, you saved the company. Raymond was leveraged to the hilt, and your capital injection was the only thing that stopped the banks from seizing the assets. I still have the books to prove it. By the next day, Mark had recruited 2 other former Price Harbor executives, the head of operations and the internal controller. All 3 of them, now free from Price influence, signed sworn affidavits detailing the financial crisis, the desperation of Raymond's requests, and the exact documented use of my $480,000. They confirmed it was a bailout, not a contribution, and that they had been present when Raymond promised to make it right. Ivy filed the affidavits with the probate court. The media got the copies. The narrative of the unstable niece began to crack. At the same time, the technical evidence started landing. The county bank, responding to a federal subpoena, provided the full after-hours access logs for the safe deposit vault. The logs confirmed an override entry on the night in question. The time, stamped by the bank's own server, was 2:17 a.m. It was a perfect match to the infrared photo my anonymous source had sent. The source I now realized was almost certainly Mark Gallo, or one of his internal allies who had maintained access to the old security feeds. The Price family's story was falling apart on 2 different timelines. The final pillar to collapse was Delaney. She sent me a text from a burner number, Trinity Church, the side chapel, 1 hour. Please, I am alone. I found her in the back pew of the small stone chapel. It smelled of old wood, lemon oil, and cold incense. She was not crying. She was hollowed out. They are going to sacrifice me, she whispered. She did not even look at me. She was staring at the stained glass window. Vane, the lawyer. I heard him with my mother. He said the case is collapsing. He said the state bar is opening an investigation into him because of what Hale said. So the lawyer was running for cover. He said, Delaney continued, her voice trembling, that the best strategy is to paint me as the unwitting beneficiary. To say I was misled by my father, and that my mother was just protecting me. They are going to put it all on me, the the forged signature, the trust. They are going to say I was a willing participant. Were you? I asked. She finally looked at me, her eyes desperate. No, not like they'll say. I knew the will was adjusted. I didn't know it was a complete fake. I didn't know about the bank, or the offshore accounts. I was scared of her. I was scared of him. She was quoting my grandfather's journal without even knowing it. What do you want, Delaney? I want immunity, she said, the words sounding foreign in her mouth. I want to be a witness, not a defendant. I will give you everything. I have everything. What is everything? The emails, she said. Mom she was sloppy. She would email me from her personal account, giving me instructions what to say to the bankers, what to sign. My pulse quickened. I want all of them, I said. All emails between you, Celeste, and Vane for the 90-day period surrounding the funeral and the probate filing. If I give them to you, will you protect me? Ivy doesn't trade, I said. But a cooperating witness, who provides material evidence, they are always treated differently from a defendant who lies until the verdict. That is the only promise you get. She nodded. I'll send them. An hour later, a password-protected zip file landed in my inbox. I opened it. It was a complete data dump of her email account for that period. I searched for Celeste's email address. I searched for will trust paper, and I found it. An email from Celeste to Delaney, sent at 3:17 a.m., the night before the will was filed for probate. Delaney had clearly asked a question about the document. Celeste's reply was short, it is done. Stop asking. The signature is perfect. Make it cleaner. She can't trace the paper. Just do as you are told. Make it cleaner. She can't trace the paper. It was the smoking gun. It was the direct, written instruction to proceed with a known forgery. I forwarded the entire file to Ivy. The tide had turned. The public opinion pieces, the blogs, the financial columns, they were no longer questioning my stability, they were questioning Celeste's. The affidavits from the ex-employees had painted me as a rescuer, not a predator. The bank logs and the email dump proved a conspiracy. The war was not over, but the momentum was mine. Which is precisely when my own side shot me. I received a call from the North Cove CLO. His voice was different, not angry, almost sympathetic. Lucy, he said, the executive committee has reviewed your written explanation. We have also seen the affidavits from the Price Harbor executives. We believe you. We understand your position. I felt a small, foolish surge of relief. Thank you. I'll continue to keep this separate. However, he cut me off. This situation has become a major public distraction. Our clients are calling. The brand is taking hits from the association. The board has decided, effective immediately, you are being placed on temporary paid administrative leave to preserve the firm's image, and to allow you to focus on your personal matters. I sat there stunned. You're benching me. It's not a punitive action, Lucy. It's procedural. We are protecting the firm. As soon as this is resolved, we will revisit your status. The line clicked dead. I had won the public battle only to lose my professional one. Celeste, even in her decline, had managed to land one last, crippling blow. I had all the evidence. I had the truth. But I was now an outcast in my own life. Sitting at home while the world I had built moved on without me. Being benched by North Cove felt like a phantom limb amputation. My professional identity, the core of how I defined myself, was suddenly gone. I woke up at 6 a.m. with nowhere to go. The administrative leave was a cage. Celeste had successfully cut me off from my armor, my resources, my very purpose, but she had made a critical miscalculation. She, a woman of guile and influence, thought my power came from my job title. She did not understand me. My power came from the work itself. And now I had nothing but time to dedicate to it. My apartment became a command center. I was no longer just a witness. I was Ivy's lead analyst. The digital evidence we had recovered from the raid was a universe of its own, and I dove in. The digital forensics team in Boston took the lead on the technical analysis, and I worked with them remotely. Their first report back was devastating. The scanned will, the official one from 2014, is a fascinating piece of work, a senior analyst named Kenji told me over an encrypted video call. He shared his screen. We isolated the signature block. You were right about the overlay, but it's better than that. It's not just a stamp, it's a lead image file. The original scan of the document was clean. No signature. The signature from the 2009 contract was scanned at an extremely high resolution, isolated, and then laid onto the blank will document. It was digitally feathered at the edges to make the ink appear to bleed slightly into the paper fibers. He could see the faint, pixelated aura around the signature. But the metadata doesn't lie, he said. The core document was created using a standard legal template. The signature image file. However, its own embedded metadata shows it was last modified in Adobe Photoshop 7.0, 2 days after your grandfather's death. The user account that modified it, Crickadmin. Celeste. She had not just outsourced the forgery. But it was the second finding that made my stomach clench. We analyzed that family photo you found, Kenji continued. The one of your grandfather signing the real will with Celeste's reflection in the glass. And I asked the EXIF data. The internal timestamp is doctored, he said. It's been manipulated to change the date. It's a common tactic to try and invalidate a photo as evidence. My heart sank. So they can claim I faked it. They tried, Kenji said, but they were clumsy. They changed the date-time original tag, but they forgot to scrub the date-time digitized tag, which is locked in by the camera's internal hardware. The two timestamps conflict. That's a huge red flag. But it's still a conflict, I argued. It's still. It is, he said. She said, no, Kenji said, a small smile on his face. Because you gave us the vector. You said they were at the yacht club that night. We cross-referenced the original hardware date from the photo with the credit card receipts from the Tidal Oaks Club. And guess what? He pulled up another file, a scanned receipt. Aunt Celeste, I read aloud, signed a dinner chit for a party of 6 at the club on the exact date and time of the photo's original hardware stamp. She was buying champagne for the Commodore. She was across town. I understood. The photo I had of him signing, that's not Celeste watching him. That's a different day. They faked the photo. They staged it. No, Lucy, Kenji said gently. It's the other way around. Think the photo of your grandfather is real. The timestamp is real. The alibi is the forgery. Celeste's team doctored the photo's metadata to create a conflict, to make it look like she wasn't there in case you ever found it. They tried to create a fake alibi for her after the fact. They failed. They had retroactively tried to cover their tracks, and in doing so, had created a second, provable layer of digital fraud. While the digital team was unwrapping the forgery, I turned my attention to the silver USB drive from the safe. We had analyzed the spreadsheets. Now it was time for the last file, a single small audio file, MP3. I double-clicked it. There was a faint hiss, the sound of a room, and then his voice, my grandfather. It was not the strong, commanding voice of the man who ran the company. It was the thinner, drier voice of his last few months, but the iron was still in it. "This is Whittaker Price," he said. The recording was clear. "I am making this recording to affirm my final wishes. My health is variable. My family, specifically my daughter Celeste and my son-in-law Raymond, have become aggressive in their attempts to manage my affairs. They are pressuring me to change my will, to disinherit my granddaughter, Lucy Martin." I closed my eyes. I could see him in the library speaking into the small silver drive. "I will not be coerced," he continued. "My mind is sound. I have just today signed in my own hand my final and binding will. It leaves the entirety of my estate, all properties, assets, and control of Price Harbor to Lucy. I am placing this will and this recording in my private safe. If you are listening to this, it is because you are Lucy and you were patient enough to find it. Or it is because Celeste has tried to circumvent my wishes. Let this recording serve as my final spoken testament. The house is yours, Lucy. The company is yours. Do not let the wolves have it." The audio clicked off. I sat in the silence of my apartment, tears streaming down my face. It was not just evidence, it was a directive, a final order from my commanding officer. The dam of evidence was breaking. Frederick Hale, the exiled paralegal, called Ivy's office. He had been digging through his own storage unit. He found his old day planners and work logs from that period. He had found the attendance log for the firm's off-site document storage. The night Celeste and Raymond had him draft the fraudulent will, they had also had him sign a transport order. It was for archival boxes. The signature of the supervising manager on that transport order. It was a perfect match for the signature on the bank's after-hours safe deposit access log. The man who supervised the removal of storage boxes was the same man who supervised the illegal opening of the bank vault. It was a direct physical link between the two actions, all coordinated by the law firm. Then Delaney, now in full cooperation mode, sent over her last piece. It was a screenshot from their family group chat, taken just last week after the raid. "Uncle Raymond, she cannot be allowed to touch Cliffside. Vane will handle it, Aunt Celeste. He is not handling it fast enough. Do not let Lucy Martin set foot in that house. It is still our house." It was a simple emotional outburst, but in legal terms, it was a gold mine. It showed active, present-day collusion to obstruct a legal order and defy the warrant's implications. Ivy's team compiled it all. She now had the final, damning presentation. She used a signature overlay software to project the 2009 contract signature on top of the 2014 fraudulent will signature. "Look at the W," she showed me on her screen. In the real 2009 signature, the pen pressure varies. It's lighter on the upstroke, heavier on the down. You can see the ink bleed. "It's human," she said. She toggled to the forged signature. "This one," she said, "is perfectly uniform. The ink density at the top of the W is identical to the density at the bottom. This isn't a pen stroke, not even a shaky elderly one. This is an inkjet printer head pass. It's paint, not ink. A machine did this. We had them digitally, physically, and audibly. That afternoon, I did something I had not done in months. I drove to the Island View Cemetery. I stood in front of his grave, a simple granite stone. Whittaker Price, I found it, I whispered to the cold stone. I got the recording. I have the proof, but I lost my job today. They benched me, Celeste. She still managed to hurt me. The wind off the water was cold. I stood there expecting an answer. None came. Just the wind. I'm going to finish it, I said, more to myself than to him. I'm going all the way. Even if it costs me everything, even if I have to lose the family and the job and all of it, I'm finishing what you started. I felt a cold, clear resolve settle over me. Your fight is not with them. It is for the truth. I went home. I sat down. I pulled out my best personal stationery, not my North Cove letterhead. I wrote a formal letter to the chief legal officer and the entire executive board. I explained my administrative leave, but I did not contest it. I stated clearly and professionally that I was in full compliance with their request. I also attached a summary, not the evidence, but a timeline of the federal investigation, and included a letter from Ivy Mallory's office confirming that I was not a target of the investigation, but rather the material witness and victim of the crimes being investigated. I was drawing a line. They could bench me to protect the brand, but I would not let them damage my reputation. I was preserving my own professional integrity. The legal machine was moving now, grinding forward with its own momentum. Ivy officially filed a motion for protection for Delaney, listing her as a cooperating witness for the prosecution. This moved her from the defendant's table to the witness stand. The State Real Estate Commission, alerted by the Attorney General, opened a parallel investigation into the Price Harbor Properties shell companies and the fraudulent transfers. And Celeste, feeling the walls close in, made one last desperate move. She hired a private investigator, a top-dollar Boston PI known for digging up dirt. He was tasked with one thing: find the scandal, the affair, the drug problem, the academic dishonesty, anything in my past that they could use to destroy my credibility. The PI spent 2 weeks. He interviewed old college roommates. He spoke to former boyfriends. He tried to get my academic records. He found nothing. He found a summa cum laude transcript. He found records of legal aid volunteer work. He found a spotless employment record at North Cove. His final report, which Ivy's team later acquired through discovery, was concise: target is clean. No scandals, no vices, no leverage. Celeste had spent a fortune to find a weapon, and all she had discovered was that I was exactly who I said I was. She was out of ammunition. All that was left was the courtroom. The trial was set. The machinery of the federal and state courts had aligned. We were 3 days out. The Price family's legal maneuvering had failed. Their attempts to quash the warrant, to seal the evidence, to paint me as an unstable extortionist, all had been systematically dismantled by Ivy's motions, which were packed with the digital forensics, the affidavits, and the bank logs. They were cornered, and a cornered Price is when they are most dangerous. Their lawyer, Vane, requested one final off-the-record meeting, not at the club, not at his office, Moonrise Harbor, at dusk. It was a public, windswept pier, desolate in the cold. A place with no walls to hide bugs, but plenty of open space. I went, not to negotiate, but to listen, to witness the final shape of their desperation. Celeste and Raymond were there. Delaney was not. They had benched their weakest player. They stood near the railing, the grey, choppy water behind them. The wind whipped Celeste's scarf around her neck. "Lucy," Celeste began. She did not bother with pleasantries. Her voice was flat, exhausted. The fight had worn her down, but the iron was still there. "This has to stop. The public nature of this. It is beneath us. It is beneath your grandfather's memory. You lost the right to speak his memory, Aunt," I said. Raymond tensed, but Celeste put a hand on his arm. "We are here," she said, "to offer a final piece. Mr. Vane has structured it. We will establish an honorary trust fund. In your name, it will be substantially endowed." "How substantial?" "Enough," she said. "Enough for you to live comfortably anywhere. The only condition is that you withdraw the federal petition. You walk away. You let the probate court settle this as a family matter. And you sign a full NDA. It was a trust fund, their apology from the family. Blood money, a payoff to make me go away so they could keep the empire they stole. That's your offer, I said. A trust fund in exchange for my silence. It's a generous offer, Raymond grumbled, staring at a distant boy. It's more than you deserve after what you've done. Here is my counteroffer, I said. The wind was cold, but I felt perfectly calm. It has two parts. 1. You and Raymond will sign a full, sworn confession. You will detail the coercion of Frederick Hale, the fabrication of the will, the illegal bank access, and the offshore shell companies. 2. You will voluntarily petition the court to set aside the fraudulent will and immediately honor the original handwritten one. You will return every asset, every dollar, every share of stock, including Cliffside House, to me, as grandfather directed. Celeste stared at me as if I were insane. You are delusional. That is the only peace you get. Celeste, the truth, it was too much for Raymond. His control, always so brittle, finally snapped. He turned on me, his face contorted, his voice a low, furious roar that cut through the wind. We did this for the family, he shouted. The few other people on the pier turned to look. We did everything to protect this family, to keep the legacy in the right house. Celeste's eyes widened. She grabbed his arm. Raymond, stop. But it was out. The confession, the motive, not love, not protection. It was about possession. It was about who deserved to be a price and who did not. Delaney, who had been standing 20 yards away near the parking lot, a silent, mandatory observer, flinched as if he had struck her. I saw the realization hit her. The full, sickening weight of his words, the right house, all her life, she had been a price. I had been Lucy. She had been the heir. I had been the help. She finally understood in that one brutal moment that her inheritance was not a gift. It was a weapon her parents had used to disown me. The air was electric with the admission. Celeste was trying to pull Raymond away. I did not speak. I slowly reached into my coat pocket. I pulled out my personal audio recorder. I held it up, pressed the record button, and the small red light blinked on. I set it on the wide wooden railing between us. Why don't you say that again, Uncle Raymond? I said, my voice quiet. Tell me again about the right house. Celeste saw the recorder and she reacted. It was not a thought, it was a pure animal reflex, a lunge. She did not lunge for the recorder. She lunged for my bag, which was on my other shoulder. She thought I was going for a different wire. Her hand clawed out, grabbing the strap of my purse, yanking it. No, she shrieked. No more tricks. It was a clumsy, desperate public assault. I stumbled back. She pulled again, and then the beam of a high-intensity security light from the harbor master's office swept across the pier. We were bathed in sudden, harsh white light. A camera, panning on its nightly sweep, was capturing the entire pathetic struggle. Celeste, the Queen of Newport, physically attacking her niece on a public pier. She froze. She let go of my bag, her hand recoiling as if burned. She looked up at the camera, her face a mask of pure, unadulterated horror. She was not afraid of the law, she was terrified of the image. I turned off the recorder. I think we are done here, I said. I walked away, leaving them frozen in the spotlight. Delaney was already gone, having fled to her car. I did not drive home. I went to a diner, sat in a back booth, and uploaded the audio file, along with a time-stamped note about the camera, to Ivy's secure server. Her reply came within minutes. The admission of motive is good. The physical assault captured on a municipal security camera. That's a gift. It demolishes her calm, concerned matriarch defense. It shows malice and panic. It is admissible. We are adding it to the witness list. See you in court. The legal tremor was immediate. The next morning, Vane filed an emergency motion. He petitioned the judge to seal portions of the upcoming hearing. He cited delicate family matters and prejudicial media coverage. The judge's response was a one-sentence denial. The public's interest in an open hearing on matters of probate fraud and federal inquiry outweighs the family's interest in privacy. The motion was denied. They were out of roads. That afternoon, a courier arrived at my apartment. It was a large, flat envelope from Ivy's office. Inside was a copy of Delaney's final signed affidavit. I read it. It was brutal. It was a complete capitulation. She detailed everything she remembered, the night her mother called her into the library, the sight of the strange legal documents on the desk, the specific verbal orders from Celeste. You will sign this. You will not ask questions. This is what your grandfather wanted. She detailed the coaching sessions before the meeting at the marina, and her fear of her father's violent temper. It was the nail. She had saved herself by giving them up completely. I was sealing the envelope when another one arrived. This one was from North Cove. My stomach tightened. It was the formal letter. I slid it open. It was what I expected. This letter is to inform you that your paid administrative leave has been terminated. I read the legalese. They were cutting me loose. My career, the one I had poured my entire adult life into, was over. I had been fired for being a victim. But then I saw the last line, the one human sentence in the entire cold corporate document. Be advised, the CLLO had written, that the board has voted to reconsider this termination pending the final official verdict of the court. A reconsideration, it was not a promise, it was not a guarantee. It was a crack in the door. It was the firm's legal, cowardly way of saying, we are firing you now, but if you win, if you really win, and the public is on your side, call us. I laughed. It was a dry, humorless sound. If I win, my career could be rebuilt. North Cove or somewhere like it would always be there. But the truth only gets one chance to be built correctly. My grandfather had laid the foundation. I just had to set the final stone. The night before the trial, I was a wreck. I was not afraid, I was vibrating. I had every piece of evidence. I had the timeline, the audio, the forensics, the witnesses. But I still felt like I was missing one last thing. The why of the shell companies. Where had the money gone? I was pacing my living room at well past midnight, staring at the flowchart of the 5 shell companies. When I heard it, a soft scurry, I froze. It was the sound of an envelope sliding on the hardwood floor of my hallway. My security system was silent. No alarms. I crept to the door. I looked through the peephole. The hallway was empty. I undid the deadbolt. There on my welcome mat was a simple white business-sized envelope. No name, no address. I picked it up. It was thick. I took it inside and locked the door. My heart hammering, I opened it. Inside was not a letter. It was a single folded sheet of paper, a schematic. It was a diagram, a technical layout of a private offshore non-bank safe deposit vault, the kind of place that does not ask for a social security number, only a password and a key. At the top of the schematic, in the box marked Client, was a name, Harbor Annuity, looted. My shell company, the one I had found. At the bottom of the page, scrolled in a shaky, familiar hand, were 2 things. A combination, a string of 10 digits, and 1 word. Frederick. Hale. He had been holding the last piece, the key to the money vault, the final destination. I looked at the clock. It was 1:14 a.m. In less than 8 hours, I was due in court. I picked up my phone. Ivy, I said when she picked up, her voice thick with sleep. I'm sorry, but I have one more thing, and you are going to want to see it. The courtroom was a theater of whispers. Vane, the Price family lawyer, understood that the facts were his enemy. His entire strategy, therefore, was to make me the enemy. He opened his defense not with evidence, but with a character assassination. His witnesses were a curated parade of the Newport establishment, all loyal to the Price dynasty. First came the former public relations manager for Price Harbor Properties. He was a slick man in a tailored suit, and he spoke of my disruptive influence. He described my attempts to see the real balance sheets as combative and undermining to family unity. He painted my $480,000 infusion as a hostile, unsolicited maneuver by a junior family member trying to force her way into control. Next, Celeste's closest friend, a woman who chaired 3 of the same charity boards. Her testimony was a masterpiece of condescending sympathy. She spoke of my tragic emotional isolation and my unhealthy fixation on my grandfather. She implied I was obsessive, unstable, and prone to flights of fantasy. They were building a narrative for the jury. I was not a victim, I was a vindictive, ungrateful, and unstable outcast, trying to tear down a loving family out of pure spite. I watched the jurors. They were listening intently. They looked confused, caught between the hard evidence of the documents and the social weight of the witnesses. Vane was good. Then Ivy stood. The petitioner calls Delaney Price to the stand. A wave of noise swept the gallery. Celeste and Raymond, sitting in the front row, went rigid. Vane looked shocked. They had all assumed Delaney was their pawn, the unwitting beneficiary, who would express confusion and sadness. They did not know she had flipped. Delaney walked to the stand. Her hands were shaking, but her face was set. She looked pale, but resolute. She looked like someone who had already lost everything and had nothing left to fear. She took the oath. Ivy's first questions were gentle, establishing the timeline of the funeral, the reading of the will. Then she moved. Ms. Price, are you familiar with your grandfather's library at Cliffside House? Yes. Are you aware of a wall safe in that library? Vane leaped to his feet. Objection. Relevance. This is a probate hearing, not a treasure hunt. It is central to the petitioner's claim of conspiracy and concealment, Ivy countered. Your Honor, Ivy said, her voice flat. Overruled, the judge snapped. The witness will answer. Delaney took a deep breath. Yes, I am. In the front row. Celeste shut her eyes, just for a second. And how did you know of this safe, Ms. Price? Price? It was behind the lighthouse painting. The one that was always crooked. Did you know the combination? Delaney's eyes met mine. It was the first time she had looked directly at me all day. Yes, she said, her voice clear. It was 0708. It was my cousin Luce's birthday. My grandfather always said it was his lucky number. Delaney, be quiet. Uncle Raymond roared from his seat. The gavel crashed down. Mr. Price, one more outburst and you will be held in contempt and removed from this courtroom. Ivy did not miss a beat. Ms. Price, I direct your attention to the days following your grandfather's death. Did you have a conversation with your mother, Celeste Price, regarding the will? This was it. Delaney looked at her mother. Celeste was staring at her, her face a mask of cold fury, a silent, terrifying command. Delaney turned back to the judge. She called me into the library. She told me my grandfather had made a mistake, that he was sick, and his mind was not clear. She said she had to fix it to protect the family, to protect me. Fix it how, Ms. Price? She had documents, the new will. She ordered me to sign them. She said Lucy would just ruin everything with her cold numbers, and that this was the only way to keep the legacy safe. The courtroom erupted. Reporters were running for the doors. Vane was on his feet, shouting, "Objection, Your Honor. This witness is clearly under extreme duress. She is being manipulated by the petitioner. We move to strike her entire testimony." The judge silenced the room. He looked past the lawyers, directly at Delaney. His voice was quiet but firm. "Ms. Price, are you under duress? Are you being forced to say these things?" Delaney looked at her mother. Celeste's stare was drilling into her. The entire room held its breath. Delaney turned back to the judge. Her voice cracked, but it did not break. "No, Your Honor. I have been under duress for the last 9 years. This is the first time I am not." The gavel hit. Objection overruled. Motion to strike is denied. Proceed, Ms. Mulleary. Delaney's confession was the tipping point. Now Ivy brought the avalanche. The lights in the courtroom dimmed. The large screens lit up. Ivy called her digital forensics expert. This was no longer an abstract legal argument, it was an anatomy lesson. Signature A, the expert said, is from the 2009 summer key contract. It is organic. Note the variable pressure, the speed, the way the ink bleeds into the fiber. This is a human hand. Then he overlaid the signature from the forged will. Signature B, the one filed with the court. It is a perfect pixel-perfect match. But look closer. He zoomed in until the W filled the screen. The line quality is flat, uniform. There is no variation in pressure. This is not a pen. This is an inkjet printer head. It is a high-resolution LED image, digitally altered in Photoshop. It is a fabrication. The jury was transfixed. The lie was now visible. Next, Ivy called Frederick Hale. He was pale, but his voice was steady. He confirmed his identity, his role as paralegal. Ivy played the audio recording he had provided. The courtroom filled with the ghostly sound of Celeste's cold voice and Raymond's growl, "Do it at all costs." "Mr. Hale," Ivy asked, "why did you wait so long?" "I was terrified," Hale said, his voice raw. "They didn't just buy Mr. Croft's silence. They threatened my license, my career. They said they would destroy me. So I ran. I am confessing today, because I can no longer live with it." Next, the bank manager. He confirmed the after-hours log. Yes, the vault was accessed at 2:17 a.m. The authorization code belonged to the estate's housekeeper, who had been granted access by Mrs. Celeste Price. The manual override was co-signed by, and he named the same law firm manager Hale had tied to the document storage. The chain was complete, the motive, the forgery, the coercion, the concealment. Finally, Ivy said, the petitioner submits into evidence the silver USB drive recovered from the wall safe. Objection. Vane cried. A last desperate attempt. Digital fraud. That file could be AI, a deep fake. It could have been created yesterday. The petitioner has a signed affidavit from an independent digital forensics expert, Ivy countered. Ivy countered, verifying the file's hash chain. Its creation date is locked in the metadata, 2014, 2 months before Mr. Price's death. It is unaltered. Aloud, the judge said, "Play it." Ivy hit the key. The courtroom fell silent, and then his voice, my grandfather's. Thin, dry, but unmistakably him. "I will not be coerced. My family have become aggressive. I have just today signed in my own hand my final and binding will. It leaves the entirety of my estate, all properties, assets to Lucy. A sound cut through the silence, a high-pitched, agonizing wail. It was Delaney. The facts, the pressure, the legal drama, she had held on, but the sound of her grandfather's voice from the grave, calling out the truth, it shattered her. This was not the rehearsal I had seen when I first walked in. This was a raw, guttural cry of profound guilt and loss. Celeste sat beside her, a statue of pure, cold ice. The petitioner calls Lucy Martin. I walked to the stand. I felt perfectly calm. The evidence had already spoken. All I had to do was provide the context. Vane's cross-examination was vicious. You did this for money, didn't you, Ms. Martin? No, I did this because the will was a forgery. You were angry. You were cut out. I was honoring my grandfather's stated wishes, which were stolen and suppressed. This is about the $480,000, isn't it? A loan you wanted back. I turned, not to him, but to the jury. I gave my family $480,000 of my own money to save their company. I did it on a handshake. I asked for no collateral and no interest. They thanked me by terminating my board seat. I never sued them for that money. I am not suing for it now. This case is not about a loan. It is about a crime. I said nothing more. I did not insult them. I did not raise my voice. I just presented the timeline and the facts. I had built my case on principles. They had built theirs on convenience. I watched the jurors' faces. They looked at me. Then they looked at Celeste and Raymond. The moral axis of the room had visibly rotated. The story was no longer about a loving family attacked by a greedy niece. It was about a criminal conspiracy uncovered by its only honest member. Vane offered no rebuttal. There was none. The judge looked down at us all, his face grim. This has been one of the most disturbing and complex probate matters this court has ever seen. The weight of the evidence is substantial. He set his papers down. I will render my final judgment in this matter tomorrow morning at 10 a.m. He banged his gavel. The proceeding was over. Then he paused. However, Ms. Mulleary, you filed an emergency motion late last night, a request for 1 additional hour tomorrow to present new related evidence, should it become available. This is highly irregular. It pertains directly to the offshore shell companies found on the USB drive. Your Honor, Ivy said, we are awaiting confirmation from international partners. We believe it is the final piece of the financial puzzle. The judge sighed. Very well, I will grant it. You have until 9 a.m. When I walked into the courtroom for the final time, the air was different. It was not just tense, it was static, brittle, like the air before a lightning strike. The gallery was overflowing. A sea of journalists and Newport locals who had come to see the monarchy fall. I took my seat, my gaze locked on the respondent's table. Delaney was already there, and she was already crying. But this was not the performative, mascara-streaked sobbing I had seen on the first day. This was the quiet, hollowed-out, exhausted weeping of someone who knew the game was over. Her eyes were fixed on me, wide, filled with a kind of terrified, final understanding. Vane, her lawyer, must have been served Ivy's emergency filing at 9 a.m. Delaney knew what I had found last night. She knew about the offshore vault. She knew there was no escape. The judge entered. He sat, his face a mask of judicial neutrality. We are here for my final judgment. However, Ms. Mulleary, your office filed a supplemental motion at 8:52 this morning. You claim significant, time-sensitive findings. The court is skeptical of last-minute theatrics. Ivy stood. Her voice was pure cold steel. This is not theater, Your Honor. It is the final receipt. Overnight, we received confirmation from international partners regarding the shell company Harbour Annuity Limited, registered by the respondent Celeste Price. Vane leaped to his feet. Objection. Outrageous. We have not had time to review this ambush. This is a violation of discovery. You have had 9 years to review it, Mr. Vane, Ivy retorted, her voice cutting through his. You helped orchestrate it, Your Honor. The evidence confirms the existence of a private non-bank security vault in the Cayman Islands, leased by that entity. She motioned to the technicians, and the courtroom screens lit up. First, Ivy said, we submit this acquired 2 days ago from the Moonrise Harbour Municipal Security feed. The grainy black and white footage played. It showed Celeste, illuminated in the harsh security light, lunging for my bag. It showed her physical, desperate assault on me. This, Ivy said, is the respondent's state of mind. Not a concerned matriarch, but a panicked conspirator. Malice, guilt, and a profound fear of discovery. Objection. Vane shouted. Overruled, the judge snapped. It goes to motive. Continue, Ms. Mall-Erie. This, Ivy said, switching the image, is why she panicked. The schematic Frederick Hale had slid under my door filled the screen, the layout of the offshore vault. And this, Ivy's voice dropped, silencing the room, is the inventory acquired by federal marshals with the cooperation of Cayman authorities at 4 a.m. this morning. A new photograph appeared, a sterile metal table inside a vault. On it sat 2 items. A cream-colored envelope sealed with a red wax seal, identical to the one my grandfather had described in his letter, and a folded rental receipt. The receipt, Ivy said, is for the vault's lease. It is dated the exact same day the respondents were attempting to destroy the wall safe in the Cliffside Library. The same day they sent Ms. Martin the too late text, believing they had won. A collective gasp went through the gallery. And the envelope, Ivy continued. It contained this. The final image, the original handwritten, unwitnessed will, the one my grandfather had signed in the library, the one Celeste had pulled from the bank vault at 2:17 a.m. all those years ago. She had not destroyed it. Her arrogance, her absolute narcissistic belief in her own power, would not let her. She had to keep it, a trophy of her victory, hidden where she thought no one would ever find it, the ultimate symbol of her control. The judge stared at the screen for a long, silent minute. He took off his glasses, polished them, and looked at Celeste. The court, he began, his voice heavy, seized the chain clearly. He began to speak, his voice resonating with a cold, controlled fury. The court finds that a fraudulent testamentary document benefiting the respondent Delaney Price was knowingly and willfully filed with this court. The court finds that the true and final will, handwritten by Whitaker Price, naming Lucy Martin as sole beneficiary, was illegally removed from his private safe deposit box and systematically, criminally concealed. He looked directly at Celeste and Raymond. They were both ashen. The court finds that every subsequent action, the coercion of legal staff, the digital forgery of the document, the spoliation of evidence at Cliffside House, the intimidation of the petitioner, and the concealment of the true will in an offshore vault constitutes a deliberate, sustained, and malicious campaign of obstruction, conspiracy, and fraud. He paused. Before I render my final judgment in the civil matter, does the respondent, Celeste Price, wish to speak? Vane whispered frantically to her. No, say nothing. Do not speak. But she stood up. The mask was gone. The charity ball smile, the noble matriarchal concern, it had all burned away, leaving something twisted, raw, and ugly. She was not looking at the judge. She was looking at me. You, she hissed, her voice vibrating with a hatred that was almost tangible. You did this. You never understood. You never belonged. Celeste. No, Vane pleaded, trying to pull her down. The house, the legacy, it belongs to the name, she continued, her voice rising to a shrill, cracking pitch. It has to be protected. The right house must be kept by the right people. It was my duty. My duty as a price. It was not an apology. It was not a plea. It was my duty. It was not an apology. It was not a plea. It was a confession, a full-throated admission of her entire motive, screamed in open court. Then Uncle Raymond lunged to his feet, his face a deep, apoplectic purple. She is right. We fed that girl. We paid for her education. He stopped. He physically bit his lip, choking on the words. But the truth, the real grubby truth, was finally out. We paid for her. It was not about legacy. It was not about honor. It was about the money, the estate tax. By passing the inheritance directly to me, my grandfather's plan would have triggered a massive, multi-million-dollar tax event. By faking the will and passing it to their own daughter, Delaney, they could keep it all in their direct line, consolidated, using the offshore trusts and shell companies to dodge the federal bill. It was never about family. It was about tax evasion. The judge looked at them with a profound, weary disgust. He held up his gavel. This court hereby sets aside as null and void the fraudulent will of 2014. This court restores and recognizes the true, original will of Whittaker Price as the binding document of his estate. He looked at me. The court orders the immediate and full transfer of all assets, including, but not limited to, Price Harbor Properties, the Cliffside House estate, and all associated accounts, liquid or otherwise, to the petitioner, Ms. Lucy Martin, effective immediately. The gavel did not fall yet. Furthermore, he continued, his voice like granite, this court is referring this entire matter to the United States Attorney's Office for Criminal Prosecution on charges of forgery, conspiracy to defraud, obstruction of justice, and witness tampering. I am also recommending a full federal investigation, in partnership with the Treasury Department, into the associated offshore entities for financial crimes. He called for a brief recess before the final signatures. The room exploded. It was pure chaos. Celeste and Raymond were motionless, frozen as Vane tried frantically to speak to them. Reporters were screaming into their phones, running for the doors. I just sat there, the adrenaline draining out of me so fast I felt lightheaded. My phone buzzed in my pocket. It was an email from the chief legal officer at North Cove. Lucy, it read, we were monitoring the live court feed. The board has voted unanimously. Your administrative termination is rescinded. Your position is restored. Effective immediately. Furthermore, we would like to offer you a new role, head of a newly created division, Global Corporate Integrity. Please advise. I read the email a week ago. It would have been my life's greatest triumph. I typed a short reply on my phone. Thank you. I appreciate the confidence, but I must respectfully decline. I will be starting my own foundation, the Martin Fund for Legal Integrity. My work is just beginning. I hit send. I put my phone away. I stood up. I turned and looked at the respondents' table. Raymond was now being spoken to by a U.S. Marshal, who was asking him to remain seated. Celeste was staring into nothing, and Delaney was looking at me. Her face was a ruin, streaked with tears, but the terror was gone. It was just empty. I walked over to her. I did not feel triumphant. I did not feel angry. I just felt free. She looked up at me, her eyes raw, as if waiting for the final blow. The insult, the gloat. It is over, Delaney, I said, my voice quiet. Today is the day the truth picked its house. All rise, the bailiff shouted. The judge came back. He looked at the docket. He hit his gavel. The sound was like a cannon shot in the small room. A perfect, deafening silence fell. Celeste Price, the Queen of Newport, looked small. Her mask had not just slipped, it had shattered, falling to the floor in 1,000 pieces. The story was over. The story has concluded. The story has concluded.